and welcome to the Remember Me podcast. I'm Maria.
And I'm Rachel.
And we're your hosts.
And we're very happy you're here with us today.
Remember Me is dedicated to preserving the memories of those affected by dementia and the families walking alongside them.
We've created this space for you to feel more connected and supported.
And we hope these stories allow for a deeper understanding and a sense of belonging.
And to shine a light on our motto, accept the good.
Always, always accept the good.
This is Remember Me.
Today, we're here with Susan, and we're going to talk all about your wife, Barbara. So, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to Remember Me.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So, first question. What was the first thing that made you think, something's not quite right here with Barbara?
Well, she was the fifth member of her family with genetic GRN FTD, which, as you all know, causes the behavioral variant of FTD. And so we were both vigilant all the way through when she started showing signs. We'd been together 38 years. And I thought I was hyper vigilant through it all, but looking back, did miss some of the earliest signs. But the two things that stood out for me that raised a red flag was when she slept, her face took on the exact same look as her mother. And so that was the most alerting thing for me. And then the second was the apathy that she showed towards friends and family, which was totally uncharacteristic of her. She was very engaged with everyone in her life. And so those really were the two that stood out as the first signs.
The face.
Yeah. Can you describe that a little bit for us, the face?
Yeah. So it was sunken cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
It was a absence of personality. And she was such a vibrant personality. And, totally different from how she had always looked when she slept. And so it was haunting.
Wow. I've never heard that. Now I wish I could go back and peek
No.
in.
But when she said it, I was like, I know what she's like. I can see
yes,
it,
of course.
But maybe listeners or someone
But I don't know if it was ever when he slept. I didn't see.
Yeah, I don't think I noticed when she slept.
But when he was awake, I'm like, you're not
looking
at me, are you?
Yeah.
You're looking right through me.
Right.
This is not
Right.
good.
So what year would you say, looking back now, were those initial signs?
I would say it started in 2018.
Okay.
I was working and traveling a lot, so not at home as much. And when I retired in July of 2019 and was around her all the time is when I started picking up these signs.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 3 months of documenting. I just really didn't want to see it, but new symptoms kept popping up, and I finally had to accept that this was what was happening. And she was 68.
Okay.
Her other family members had been much younger. And so she had thought she had escaped this, and I had hoped she had, but it was evident after about 3 months that I couldn't look the other way.
During that time when you're kind of documenting things, watching, did you ever bring it up to her? Did you say hey, I'm noticing it?
Not until I convinced myself that I had to do it, and I did bring it up to her very directly. We had that kind of, good communication, and I said to her, and actually this story is documented in my memoir, Dancing in the Face of Death, the story of me telling her, and we were on vacation when I did it. I needed to be away from our home for some reason that I can't explain, but I told her, you're showing signs of FTD.
And
just very directly, because we, had been through this so many times.
Right. So you mentioned the early things, the face and apathy. What was it that got you to that point that you had to say
Like
something.
like symptom
Yeah, what
wise.
behaviors or what made it that you couldn't ignore it and you had to face the reality?
It was really the cumulative number of symptoms. So it was things like her face going blank, even when she was awake. Like you were saying a minute ago, nothing there.
Yeah.
It was a certain kind of, not really rudeness. She never quite got to that stage, but a dismissive kind of way with people that I knew she cared deeply about. It was just kept going. I mean, there were so many symptoms that I documented 9 or 10 before I finally knew I had to say something.
And then when you brought it up to her, and frankly, I think that's the only way you can do it, right? Like, this is what I'm seeing.
Yep.
And what was her response? What did she say?
She said, "You're just paranoid. You have always been afraid that I was going to have this." And I said, "Well, actually, it was you that's always been afraid.
Right.
And I have been open to the potential, but I was not ever concerned about it." And when I said to her, "Here are some things that I'm seeing so that I can be very concrete with you," well, there were two that really hit home. One was that she failed to be on top of her checking account, and she had an overdraft, which she had never had. And the other one was that her handwriting declined to almost being unrecognizable, and she had beautiful handwriting. And I knew that she had noticed that symptom. And so, she said, "Okay, so what do we do now?" So that was a sign that she had accepted it.
Yeah, right away. And what did you do? I mean, I know it's not just a
Yeah.
simple answer, but what was the next step?
Well, while we were still in that conversation, I said, "All right, so what we need to do is make a neurology appointment." And she said, "Okay," and I really felt like she did it just to get me to shut up, but she did agree. And so when we got back into our home in Portland, Maine, I made an appointment, tried. I couldn't get one for 8 months. And if we weren't going to, get it for 8 months, we were actually going to be in our retirement place for the fall and winter, which was New Orleans. So I made 2 neurology appointments. And sure enough, it took till August of 2020 to actually have the appointment. And then another, month of testing and all that. So it's like 9 months from the point that she agreed, which is short, I know, compared to lots of families, but it still was aggravating.
An eternity for you. Yeah.
So, being that she knew you guys were aware of the genetic status,
Right.
were there opportunities for her, or I don't know, was she involved in research? Like, did she have some sort of like a plan of, if this happens, this is where I need to go, or this is where my family went, or like, had you talked about that?
When it was when her cousin, so when it entered her generation, I tried to get her to go to the University of Pennsylvania FTD Center, which is where her aunt and cousin were being treated. And I also tried, as soon as there was a genetic test available, to get her to take the test. And her approach to it was, at the time, "I don't really want to know." And I'm very different. I wanted to know, but she did not want to know. She said, "Look, I'm doing everything I can to prevent this from coming my way." And she had been for decades, paying attention to being cognitively active and physically active and all the things to address any kind of neurodegeneration. And she said, "And there's no cure. So, and there's not even anything being tried." And that was true at the time.
Right.
But then when she did get the diagnosis, I jumped right in to say, we need to get involved in some kind of treatment, and I'm going to start looking. And she was amenable to that.
Okay.
Oh, great.
And so you guys have a little blip of time before you get the diagnosis. You get the diagnosis. What is her behavior at this point? Is she docile? Is she wandering? Like, what are you seeing? What does her disease trajectory sort of look like?
So since I was retired, we were pretty constantly together, and I was concerned about things like her driving.
Mm-hmm.
I had been concerned for several months. That was one of the things that troubled me. And when I told her that I thought that, or that I knew that she had FTD and that we just needed to get it confirmed, she voluntarily gave me the keys to her car and said, well, I have been, once she accepted that there could be this potential, she said, I have been concerned that I'm not driving as well as I used to. And she gave me the car keys.
No
Because of the
hesitation.
overdraft, no hesitation,
No arguments. No
voluntarily.
hiding. So
She
it's
had gone, she had gone through her mother having resisted giving up the keys and all the trouble that that caused in between,
Sure.
her mother and father. So she was not going to do that.
So she still had that
And then
insight to know.
she did.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, she did. She had insight all the way through. I don't know how.
Wow.
I was nothing like I had seen with any of her other family members, but she was a very present and in touch person. She knew herself, she knew the issues that she could potentially face, and she'd gone over it and over it for decades. So I think
she was ready.
that's the one benefit of genetic FTD.
Yeah, the one benefit.
If you can call it that.
Yeah.
Right. Now, so you mentioned Portland, Maine. Were you going down to Penn, or were you going close?
Well, we hadn't gone to anyone. We had gotten the diagnosis in New Orleans, but like I said, I immediately started to research clinical trials, and that was partly because I have two sisters who went through clinical trials for other medical issues. And I really believe in science and research, and as did Barbara. And so we found, shockingly to me, that there were 3 options for GRN FTD when we started looking. Wow. And she immediately said, I want to do the phase 1/2 gene replacement therapy clinical trial. Her words were, I want to go big or go home.
Wow. So
she became the first person in the US, second in the world, to have a new gene put into her brain.
What?
To try to cure, to try to cure
Barbara.
GRN FTD.
Could you share with us a little bit about, because we haven't talked about this very much on the podcast, like what your experience was like with being a partner to someone in a clinical trial?
Yes. So not everyone may know, but when you agree to be a part of a clinical trial, you have to have a study partner. So I, of course, was the study partner. So because she was the first one at UPenn, it took longer than we thought it was going to get the trial started. So not her. I was on pins and needles for several months, but anyone who has been involved with UPenn FTD knows they are just extraordinary human beings. And so 100%. They kept in touch with us and, kept doing many discussions. Started with Lainey, who's the genetic counselor, and then eventually with Dahlia, who was the first of the clinical coordinators. And they kept us apprised. So we drove down for the first meeting, and the first meeting was an assessment to see if she actually met all the criteria for the clinical trial. And if she did, they were going to dose her in the next week. And so we then would have to stay down there for 4 weeks. And so we drove down and stayed in Philly for 5 weeks because she did qualify. And they did dose her, which is essentially a shot in the back of the brain that's done by an excellent neuroradiologist that they have there. And then the reason for the 4 weeks of assessment is for safety.
Sure.
To be sure that there's no, because it was a phase 1 trial, that there is no adverse effects.
Wow.
And she had none.
The first
And
person?
her progranulin went up almost immediately.
Wow.
They didn't tell us, of course, right away, but it went up and stayed up at 100%. And that
Wow.
clinical trial is still having that success.
Wow. I'm going to hit like a quick pause on our story timeline because I want to ask, what was this like for you? Like, did you have a lot of hope? Were you just in caregiver mode? Like, I got to take her here at this time. I'm going to take one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. Like, what was going through your mind at this time?
I was hoping for a medical miracle all the way through the whole thing. And I was in that posture because both of my siblings had tremendous success in their clinical trials. And I felt like, why not Barbara? They had succeeded, and hopefully my fortune for the people that I loved would hold through. She never went into it with that opinion or that attitude. Her decision to do this was for her nieces and nephews because of the genetic FTD.
Sure.
So she took on the courage it took her to do this was just purely for the benefit of others.
I'm so glad to hear that you were at Penn because I'm sure you were cared for. The names that you mentioned,
For sure.
we know those ladies well, and I just can't imagine you uprooted your life for 5 weeks and with this hope. And like, how was Barbara doing just even being in a new setting? Was she okay?
That was a little challenging
Yeah.
because we were staying in a hotel, and we were walking to campus, and she was actually starting to show some difficulties in walking. But the good news is that our nieces and nephews, some of them live in New York, some in Washington, D.C., and they came up over the course of the time. So we had family come. We had some friends who came to kind of have her be around people who she knew as much as possible. So it couldn't have worked out better. But it was a lot of vigilance for me. She hadn't started wandering then, but I knew that she could start at any time.
Yeah.
So knowing that, I will say that I was pretty hyper vigilant, and it was really exhausting.
I bet.
So the 5 weeks is over and you go home. Take us from there. What does life
Sure.
look like? Tell us what happens next.
We try to return to as much normalcy as possible. We had to return every month for the first 3 months. So we had to go back 4 weeks later, and then another 4 weeks later. But soon after we got back, so we had been together almost 39 years at the time, 38 years at the time. And she asked me to marry her.
Really? Okay, tell me more.
Yeah, what did you let's get into that.
Oh,
What did you
that's the
say?
sweetest. I mean,
I'm giving away a lot of the parts of my book, but yes, it was.
Were you in
It was a shock. I was in shock because we had many times both mutually agreed that we did not need to be married. We were very intentionally in a relationship, and that worked for us. We were also ardent feminists, and so we were not particularly, big on the institution of marriage for women. But we ended up when she asked me, and I said, why do you want to do this now? She said, I want to celebrate us. And I said, well, then yes, of course.
What do you say to that?
I can't wait to read this book.
I wish I could have seen the.
And tell us where we are in the timeline. So diagnosed, you said 2018, or was that for signs?
No, the signs started then, and I didn't pick up on them until 2019.
Okay.
In her official diagnosis came in the fall, November of 2020.
Okay.
And then this is now 2021 because that was how long it took for the clinical trial to be ready. So she was dosed in July of 2021. Okay. We were there through, August, those 5 weeks. And in the end of August, when we got back home, was when she asked me to marry her. And we were married in October of 2021.
Oh, where?
It was very quick.
In Portland?
In Portland.
In the old part?
Yes, in Portland. Yeah, actually.
In the old port? I haven't even shared this, Susan,
port.
but my husband's from Maine, and he went to law school in Portland, and the old port has a very special place in my heart. Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
So you guys come.
Yeah, one of the hotels there. Yeah.
Okay.
And part of the reason was that we also had decided the year before that we were going to move from Portland, and we had bought a house at her. We had been on that vacation that I mentioned where I told her she had FTD. And on that vacation, she wanted to buy a house in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, which we did. And so we moved in October from Portland to San Miguel de Allende, where I am right now.
Oh my gosh. This is beautiful. This is a fairy tale, okay? And then what happened?
It's a fairy tale, but, feel the love. Yes. So
you guys that's a big move. How does
it was a big move?
Yeah.
Well, she wanted it. She said, I need to be where there is color and beauty all the time. And the people are wonderful and I will feel safe. And so I went along with it, as I always did whenever she had a strong opinion of something, and she would go along with me when I had a strong opinion. And so we moved to a place we knew no one, but the people, everyone here, neighbors and so forth, were fabulous, the doctors. And we continued to go back to Penn for our treatments. And we went from every month to every 3 months, and then eventually every 6 months. But through 2021, the rest of 2021 and all of 2022, we were going back every 3 months. Unfortunately, Barbara developed, by July of 2022, she developed a secondary motor neuron disorder. It's called an extrapyramidal movement disorder that affects all of your involuntary movements, swallowing, posture, walking, and that really caused a shift in her because we had both been seeing definite cognitive improvements, or for sure no more decline in cognition. But then she developed this extrapyramidal movement disorder, which Dr. Irwin and others told us was very unusual with GRN, but it did hit her, and we think her mother probably had it as well, although hers was never diagnosed, and her mother never had an official FTD diagnosis even. She just had the dementia of unknown histology.
Right.
They didn't know what was causing it back then. And so when she got that diagnosis and started particularly having really serious difficulty with swallowing, and that was problematic because by then she had also escalated in her lack of control over her eating.
Yeah.
So she was, pouring food into her mouth anytime food was set in front of her. And she said to me, I'm ready to let go. And we had put in place extensive advanced directives for her. And so she had certain indicators. And she said, I'm hitting one of my indicators and, I'm ready to go. And so I knew that she was a very strong-willed person, that something was going to happen fairly soon. And she succumbed to a middle of the night choking episode in early January of 2023, passed away.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that's how she. I
Yeah.
knew she had passed in 23, but yeah.
So it was, you woke up and like what you see in the movies.
And she was, yes, she was going.
Yeah.
And she had, because of her advanced directives, we had alerted our doctor and the hospice doctor here, because when her mother passed away, unfortunately, she had been on a feeding tube, and Barbara and her brothers had to petition the state to get the feeding tube off. And it took 2 weeks for her mother to die, and she did not want to put me through that. So we had a hospice doctor on call, and she came and gave Barbara the death with dignity that she had wanted.
Were you alone? I know the hospice doctor was there, but was it just you and Barbara?
Yes.
Wow.
That was what we wanted. And her ashes are here in the cemetery here in San Miguel de Allende, where mine will be as well.
So it's 3 years now.
Yes. When she, said to me, I'm ready to go whenever it happens, I said, well, we need to make a little bit more of a plan. She said, of course, because she used to tease me all the time about being a planner. And I said, do you want your ashes to be here? And her answer was, yes. Day of the Dead is the next best thing to a jazz funeral, because we had been to many in New Orleans.
Wow.
And so that's how we chose to have our ashes here.
So she was very communicative with you.
Yes.
Through the
She was.
whole disease, it sounds
Yes.
like. She was able to be with
Yes.
you.
She was. That's the gift of the clinical trial, I will say, that I think that's what enabled that to happen, because she didn't further lose her cognition. Her mother had lost the ability to speak. She never did. And she stayed very much, more present. I mean, in fact, what kept me going was there wasn't a day that she didn't, smile when I walked in the room, or didn't, reach to hug me. And I think it's because she got, this gene therapy as quickly as they could do it. I mean, others have gotten it even more quickly after her being the first one. But yes, it made a big difference in our ability to have a more quality life. Her decline was very different than her mother and aunt and cousin before her and her brother.
Was she ever able to describe what it feels like to have FTD? Was she ever like, this is very confusing, or I don't know why I keep eating? Like, was she able to communicate
Yes.
what did she say it was like to live in a brain that is atrophying?
So there were several times that we had dialogues about this, because of course some of the behavior is very challenging.
Sure.
And I would try to talk with her about how the behavior was impacting me, and how could we manage it together. And one of the things I describe in the book is a scene where she's picking at, like, repetitively picking at a scab on her arm and causing her arm to bleed. And I'm saying, trying to distract her 67 different ways, and she's having none of it. She just keeps picking at it. She keeps saying, I'll stop, and then doesn't stop. And it's, escalating along those lines. And I finally said, I don't know what to do to, keep you from hurting yourself. And I can't let you just keep hurting yourself. And she said, I know, and I can't stop it. She had that kind of insight.
Yeah.
She said, so, you're going to have to do something dramatic. I said, I don't know what that could be because, like,
Give me a hint.
and she said,
Yeah.
well, she said, tie my hands.
Oh,
And I just burst into tears.
of course.
Like I was never going to
Yes.
be doing that.
Yes,
And
right.
she just kept repeating that over and over.
Oh,
No, you have to, because I can't stop. So,
huh.
eventually I figured out how to distract her. I said, well, then let's just go for a walk. And she was still,
Sure.
struggling a little with walking, but mostly I just needed to shift her attention. And we went actually out to our patio and walked around a little bit, and it shifted her, focus on this
Wow.
scab. But she would say to me about the eating the same kind of thing. I can't stop it. She was very aware.
Wow. That's unreal.
Now, how did you cope with that emotional, probably physical burnout as the spouse, especially when I don't want to say you're isolated, but you're in another country? Like, what
Yeah,
was your
I was pretty
go-to?
isolated.
Yeah, what was your? Did you have any strategies? How did you survive? Basically.
What kept me surviving was that we did still have this emotional reciprocity, where we could still have exchanges and hugs, and I felt the very strong intentional bond that we had had through our 4 decades together. And I leaned on friends. I had friends who were like, call me anytime, and I would call and break down with them and get through the pain and the tragedy of the whole thing, especially that that really escalated after she had this extrapyramidal movement disorder, and I could see the swallowing problems, and knew that she was on her way to wanting to let go of her life. And I hired, so we had bought long-term care insurance when Barbara was 50.
Okay.
And frankly, I should have activated it a lot sooner than I did, because we had in-home care coverage. That's what she wanted, and that's what I told her I would do.
Okay.
And I kept doing the care and kept doing the care because I felt like, this is the love of my life. I'm the one that should be taking care of her. But she had been very clear in her advance directives that when she reached certain points, such as, again, with this extrapyramidal, she started having first urine incontinence and then bowel incontinence, that she needed, more professional care.
Yeah.
And when I was able to activate that care, I would do things like take walks, which helps me a lot.
Yeah.
And, again, really calling on friends who were the best in supporting both of us, and do Zooms with them, and keep connected to us. So it was the only way I survived.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Were you writing throughout the journey? Tell our listeners, like, was that part of your coping, or did you
Yes.
process it after? Tell us.
No. So I have always used journaling when I'm in some kind of emotional crisis. And so, of course, from the first time that I recognized what was happening to her, I was journaling. And right after she was diagnosed, so, I'd been taking notes for a full year. She, by that time, was sleeping in a lot. And I would journal in the mornings. And one morning she came out when I was journaling, and she knew that I had journaled, for when things were tough for me. And so she said, "Are you writing about me?" I said, "Yes, I'm writing about you and me and, what's going on." And she said, "You should write a book. You need to write a book. It would help people."
Oh.
And I said, "Well, yeah, but this story is not going to be pretty. And she said, I know, that's why you need to write a book. So I promised her I would. And so I started transforming the notes into a book. And then from that point on, which was all of 21 and 22 into 23, I was writing the book as it was unfolding. So it's a very current, like emotional book,
Wow.
but
That's
it's a love story.
this whole journey has been a beautiful love story. Will you marry me? Like I'm still stuck
I'd
on
love to
that.
move into that too.
Can we just talk about grief for
Okay.
2 minutes?
Yeah,
2 minutes
yeah.
with the grief, okay?
Absolutely. Yep.
We know what it's like to lose somebody, piece by
Yes, you do.
piece and
Yeah.
all of that. I don't know why this one feels different. Maybe because she was so insightful.
Yeah.
Like, was she able to? It sounds like she knew the end was near. Did
She did.
she ever discuss with you, like, this is what I'm afraid of, or like, this is what I think it's going to look like? Or was she in any way, quote unquote, spiritual like that? Did she have thoughts about what comes next?
Yes, since you guys know about this, you go through the anticipatory grief, all the small deaths along the way and the constant changes and losses and you know knowing that the person you love is losing themselves slowly. And because she was aware, it was even I'd been through this with her mother, and her mother was not aware, and that felt easier.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that was where I was getting to.
Yeah.
Our parents had no
yeah.
idea.
So, yeah. So when, she would talk openly about all the different capacities that she was losing and, had hints into them, not everything, but a lot of them, it really shifted when I had to tell her about this movement disorder. And she said to me, that changes everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, what does that mean? And she said, I don't want to live through the decline, the physical decline that's coming. And I said, yes, I understand that. And I thought, she would kind of forget this conversation
Wrong. Yeah.
as time went on, but
Yeah.
she didn't. And so she kept bringing it up and she kept saying, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. And every time she would say that, I would say, why?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
her answer was the same every time. And her answer was, because I'll be at peace. And she
Oh.
said that every single time I asked her.
Yeah. How do you fight with someone? No, stay a little longer.
To me,
Yeah,
hearing that, like if I could have heard my mom say that,
right.
that would have.
It's a gift.
It's a gift.
It
Yeah.
is such a gift. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, that's because in my mind, I'm like, was her life fulfilling enough? Like, was she? Like, I mean, of course, I'm sure that Barbara wanted to stay and be with you, but knowing the circumstances, because
Yeah.
she was aware, she could say, I'm at peace.
Yeah, I don't want to do this. I want to live.
Wow.
I want to live a good death too. Like I want to
Yes.
have a nice
I
exit.
think, like you said, death with dignity.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And there is actually a scene, and like giving everybody the whole story, but there is a scene where she has an insight and she says, I'm ready to go, but I'm not ready to leave you.
Oh, jeez. I'm ready. It's a tattoo. I want to hear I know the love story. I was there when she asked you to marry her. Basically, I feel like I was part of it. I was at the wedding too. I basically feel like that. How did you
The wedding
guys?
was cool.
I have no doubt with the flaming hearts behind you. Like, I think I should come and visit. Tell us how you met. Tell us the love story. Sure. Tell us what she was like before FTD.
So we met in a very kind of bizarre way. So I was working on my doctorate in organizational psychology, and it was a study of feminist workplaces, self-identified feminist workplaces. And I was interviewing a collective that was, this was back in the 1980s. I was interviewing a collective of four women who had a bookstore restaurant and in Connecticut. And when I was interviewing them, every one of them said to me, "You have to interview our fifth collective member." Well, she's not officially a collective member. She has a job, so she works all the time during the week, but she works with us on Sundays, and she was instrumental in getting our uh, business going. So I was coming back for a second round of interviews, and I scheduled an interview with this woman, Barbara. And I, of course, am supposed to be the one asking the questions, and I could hardly get a question in into the conversation because she was like the most curious person. She always wanted to know people. She was always asking questions. And finally, I had to say to her, "Look, I'm interviewing you, so let me get one of my questions in
Let
here."
me do my job.
She just was a very, you know, um, easy person to talk to, easy to engage with. And then I about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months later bought a house and moved into a house near this restaurant bookstore. And as I pulled up with my U-Haul full of furniture, she had organized four people from the community to come help me move in. Um, she just was that kind of person.
That's so
And
sweet.
we were friends for about a year before we got involved as lovers. And she just was a person of impeccable integrity, very honest, like I said, very loyal, both as a friend and family member. She was quite stubborn, and in some ways that helped her through this disease because she was determined not to let it take over her life, that she was going to just continue living. And in fact, you'll hear that in a minute when I read a piece of an exchange that we had after she was diagnosed. But she was a strong, independent woman, and she was that way all the way through to the end.
I think you have such a particular, I don't like the word peculiar because there's like a negative connotation, but just a different view of
Yeah.
FTD than I think like the normal FTD person. Like my dad was not there for
Right.
a solid portion of the disease. And then
Yeah.
like she's like, I'm ready to go. I'm done here. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like it's such a
Yeah.
different.
But it's like a double it, you know, like.
Yeah, but then you know exactly what is happening.
Because I think something that was really challenging, and I know it was challenging for my dad because he talked about it on the podcast, was like trying to figure out what decisions to make for her because they had never spoken
Right.
about these things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
she had PPA and she lost her ability to, you know, speak, communicate effectively. And so he was left wondering and he was lonely, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But
For sure.
Yeah, because then you're like, don't know what's going on, don't know what's happening to you. But then it didn't sound. I don't.
I really love the way you laid it all out. It's so beautiful.
It's.
I love this episode.
What's one piece, just one little takeaway or one little tangible piece of advice that you would give another spouse whose husband, wife, partner
Right.
is affected?
So let me back up just a little bit
Sure.
and say that having lived through her mother, her aunt, her cousin, and we were with her mother there every single weekend for the first 2 years before she went into the nursing home, and seeing very up close and personal the decline and the loss of awareness, the sort of more traditional FTD journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I was so adamant when I knew that this was happening, of finding a clinical trial. And I didn't ever expect to get the gene replacement therapy, but it was a godsend because of how it changed her process of decline. She, again, as I said, was not, she did not lose as much cognition as the average FTD person would.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm an adamant supporter of research and of research participation. That I think if you can get any kind of experimental treatment, because all of it is right now experimental, it will help everyone in your family. It will help the person with FTD, and it will help the future of FTD. So, you know, for me, that made all the difference in our experience. And I want for everyone to have that different trajectory.
Beautiful.
Wow.
That could have been a little article.
I know. So good. I want to make sure we have time to just like talk a little bit more about Barbara.
Okay.
And then we'll read the letter.
Ask how she wants to be.
Yes.
Okay.
Before we do how she wants to be remembered, can you tell me something that you do now that makes you feel close to Barbara?
I talk to her quite a lot. I go visit her in the cemetery, not just on the Day of the Dead, but all throughout the year. And I know that she is present in my life all the time, and that she is absolutely thrilled that I actually wrote this book, and that it is going to be published. And I'm will always be deeply connected to her.
Of course you will.
Okay, me. How I want to like give it a little.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't have it yet.
Do you want me to ask?
Yeah.
How do you think, or maybe even Barbara told you, how do you think that Barbara would want to be remembered?
I'd say first and foremost, she'd want to be remembered as a loyal partner, friend, family member. She was the kind of person who was so connected to the people in her life, but in a way with an amazing integrity. Like, she wasn't afraid to challenge her loved ones, including me, if they weren't being their best selves, because she wanted everyone to be their best selves. She had impeccable integrity, and she was willing to take risks. I mean, we took risks in the business. It was usually my ideas, but she supported them. And she did not hesitate to take the risk of being involved in a phase 1 clinical trial, which is all about safety without regard to whether there's efficacy. And she definitely wants to be remembered for that courage.
Absolutely.
That's how I'm going to remember this episode.
Yeah, courage.
And her asking you to marry her. So
yeah,
and
moving to Mexico.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay,
Hearts.
yeah,
There's a lot of memorable parts. Yes.
I feel like I was again. I feel like I was there. Would you explain what you're going to read to us?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So I'm going to read an excerpt from chapter 5 of the memoir, again entitled "Dancing in the Face of Death." And the reason for that title is Barbara and I danced always, and in fact, all the way through to the very end. And so this is the excerpt. I returned to the living room and lit the gas fireplace, warmth instantly comforting me deep in my bones. My tranquility proved fleeting as a question kept arising in my mind. When will I hear from the UPenn FTD Center about the clinical trial? Every day without an answer tested my limited patience and increased my anxiety, a feeling I tried hard to hide from Barbara. The sudden pinging of metal on metal interrupted my worries. Barbara was coming down the stairs, her new ring rhythmically tapping the handrail as she descended. When she entered the room, I turned to embrace her with my eyes. I was startled to see her approaching with her phone held out to me. Her narrowed eyes and piercing look told me Barbara was on a mission. Here, read this, she demanded. It's my new mantra. Every time Barbara expressed her feelings and intentions, I rejoiced and gave her my full attention. I took her phone and saw she was on Instagram. The post on her screen read, "If your path leads you to hell, walk through it like you own it." I laughed aloud and Barbara joined me. Every time we looked at each other, we laughed louder and longer. I wasn't surprised at her claiming this statement. It captured Barbara's determination to function as normally as she could for as long as possible. She wasn't shying away from telling people her diagnosis, but she was determined not to let it define her. My laughing finally subsided into a beaming smile. I held her determined eyes with mine as I spoke. "Good for you. I admire your courage." She replied, "Like I keep telling you, I don't experience the loss of planning and impulse control that you and the doctors tell me I have. So I'm forging ahead as though it isn't happening. I can still read, even if I don't remember every detail like I used to, and enjoying the experience is good enough for me." Barbara had never been one to fret or second guess what life presented to her. She didn't get trapped in why me thinking. She stayed steady, confident, and capable no matter what life threw her way. I valued this grounded, determined spirit of hers and wanted to embrace it for myself. Lately, I'd been so alert to her changing behaviors, like her resistance to showering or her saying no to everything before agreeing to it. I'd lost sight of her strengths and of her intention to embrace life head on as she'd always done. Her sentiments were right on the nose as usual. Difficult times called for heightened courage and love, not fear and withdrawal. Barbara plopped down on the couch next to me, and I pulled her close, planting a kiss on her forehead. "I'm going to follow your lead and walk through this hell like I own it too," I said. She hugged me, and we wore our precious closeness like a warm blanket while we enjoyed the dancing flames in our fireplace. Nothing else mattered if we were together and on the same page.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
If you want to learn more about Remember Me, you can go to remembermeftd.com.
We also love getting new Instagram followers, and you can follow us at Remember Me Podcast.
We're also building a space just for you at the Remember Me Foundation. For more information or to donate, visit remembermefoundation.org.
This podcast is produced by Maria Kent Beers
and Rachel Martinez.
And the beautiful music you hear is a song called So Damn Lucky by Bailey